Great to be here, and I'm thrilled to be talking with Anthony Green. I was playing professional basketball overseas and has type 1 diabetes. And I'd like to maybe open up, Anthony, with kind of go back. I personally got diabetes when I was 16. And I think you got it when, if I understand correctly, when you were 14. And maybe give a little bit of the history, how that was, how you found out about it.
Yeah, so extremely grateful and thankful for being on here talking with you. I was diagnosed when I was 14. This was my freshman year, ending and going to my sophomore year of high school. Kind of just progressed over a few weeks that it was leading up into April. It was actually Good Friday in April when I was diagnosed. So just kind of leading up, I couldn't do a lot of things. Going upstairs I'll start with that. Going upstairs was a real hard thing for me, which is just something so simple. I just get very winded going up the flights of the stairs at my high school. Just extreme thirst was the number one thing that kind of just really kicked in. And I was wondering why I was going through so many Powerades waters throughout the day, like full, probably like a half of a 24 pack of water I was going through in a day. And then there was, I did wet the bed a few times. I mean, it's normal. It happens. It is what it is. And then it was funny. One day we were out at the park and playing with just some friends. I couldn't even like run up and down the court. I was always taking breaks and everything, just not getting back or whatnot. And I was like, all right, I got to get off. I don't feel good. And ended up just throwing up everything from the day. My parents got called, came and picked me up, brought me home. I was just on the couch, just laying there. I didn't eat or drink anything for 6 hours. And like, all right, so I got to go in because I couldn't hold anything down or do anything. And that night they knew right away what was going on. I had no idea. They hooked me up to breathing tubes and everything. They worried that since my blood sugar was so high and ketones I had, that my brain was swelling, and put me in ICU that night, and then told me I had diabetes, and I had no idea what was going on. I thought it was just something they would treat that day, and I'd be on meds for a few months or so, and I'd be fine. But seeing my mom and dad just break down and seeing that, I kind of knew that I was in for something else. And it does run in my family. Fortunately, skip my mom and my father. Both my grandfather on my father's side and my grandmother on my mother's side, they had it. I do have three other cousins that are type 1. She's both nurses, actually. So we do have a history of type 1 in our family.
Wow. So were your grandparents type 1 also?
Yes, they were.
Wow. Well, first of all, I always get asked this at camp. Do you remember what your blood sugar level was going into the hospital?
Going in the hospital, they said I was at 760.
Wow, that might be the record. I'm trying to think because we have campers who you can kind of laugh about it after the fact. Not so funny at the time, but they kind of go with who had the highest number going in. That 760 is off the charts. That's scary.
Yeah. Because I was dealing with it for like 2 weeks, just kind of put it off, just thinking I was going through puberty. I would weigh about like 205 and I dropped down to 180, just ate away at myself for a long time. And good thing I went in when I did. And I guess I hit the record for 760, you know?
Yeah. No, thank goodness you got it. Like you said, thank goodness you got in when you did.
Yeah.
Were you switching gears a little bit? Were you always a basketball player? Was that always was that your dream at the time, or what were you going at 14? What was your life like?
I always tested out with a few other sports when I was younger. Basketball was always the main thing that I would go back to, though. I just had a love for it. I just loved watching the Celtics play. I loved playing. I loved KG, Paul Pierce, and everything. The Celtics. I'd go to all the games all the times when the Big Three was there. Like, my dad was a Boston police officer at the time, so there'd be times where he'd get tickets and stuff from the players, and we'd be able to go. And it was the best thing ever. But it was baseball I did when I was younger, and I did football through middle school into that freshman year, and then I just kind of once I got diabetes, I just dropped the football because I slimmed down and just my body just changed, and I finally fit like the ideal basketball body that the coach was looking for. Just chasing me. He's like, you can't go back to football. You gotta stick with this now. I was like, yeah, I have no problem with that. I love this. So
How
football
good
just
were you in high school? Were you a big recruit, or were you, I know I was a late bloomer personally, but
yeah.
how was your high school career? And then who were you
Um
recruited by? How'd you end up at Northeastern?
I I was like you. I was a late bloomer. I was young. I graduated from public high school at 17, and I decided to reclass and go to Tilton School in New Hampshire and play for them, play in the AA NEPSAC. Coming out of public school though, I had a few. I had Marist, Manhattan, and then going into that summer playing AAU and everything is kind of when schools really started to open up to me. I had DePaul offer me. I was in talks with URI for a little bit. Their coach, VCU kind of came on here and there. Purdue, Northeastern. I had URI, but then they fell off, and then that coach went to BC, and I was supposed to be recruited by them, but that didn't work out. But those are the ones that really stuck out the most because I knew I had. I took official visits to DePaul. I did a Northeastern one, and then after my Northeastern one, I was supposed to go to Purdue, but then I ended up just committing to Northeastern.
And
Just because of
did diabetes play any factor in there? And by that I mean you stayed local versus going away.
in part it did, just because I was still kind of new and going away to prep school did help me learn to manage it more on my own and how I would get meds to me, and if anything ever happened, like what would I do in that situation. But Northeastern, just the program really stuck out to me. The coaches, my family loved it. I mean, being able to play so close to home for such like a great program was just I couldn't pass that up. But I mean, it was, and being close to home too for diabetes, especially, like just keep my same doctors, same everything, same pharmacy where I pick everything up, just made it 10 times easier for me. So I think it did play a little bit of a part in the recruiting process, but the program itself just really stuck out to me. It was a great university.
Yeah, no, great university, great program. How was it playing with diabetes? And well, let's go high school, and
hmm
then tell me how it was, how transitioning to, you said prep school, obviously you got to be on your own a little bit, and then
Yeah.
how it was being in college, and then finally then transition to go play international, which is obviously a big move.
hmm High school, I depended on the nurses a lot. I was on the vial method. They managed that. I started bringing my own lunch, had the numbers already, had them written down on the bag. My mom would do that in the morning, slaving away at that for him. God forbid if she ever forgot to write it on there. She'd always call me and be like, did I put it on there? Midway through school, I'm like, I can't be looking at my phone right now. But yeah, they handled that. And then kind of towards my senior year, I got more independent just because I knew I was going post grad. I switched to little cartridges. I was on a Humalog pen that had full units and half units. I switched to that. I did that, and then I did that all throughout prep school and into college. I did that, and I'm still on that. I do Humalog like quick pens though now, just because they don't make any more of the half cartridge pens anymore. But I find that works best for me. And then for pro, I stuck with the same thing, just ordered as much as I could. Brought it with me throughout the airports, traveled with it, and ended up with about 5 or 6 months supply. And the team was able to get me my prescriptions out there if I ever needed it, but my parents and doctors found a way to ship it out just so I had extra just to get me through that season. But COVID, I came back with a lot more, so didn't really need that extra supply they sent like a month before we closed down, you know.
Yeah. Well, thinking traveling internationally and playing internationally, is there any advice you would give people who were going to go overseas, even just to go vacation or just traveling?
Yeah.
that you
Um,
obviously you said bring all your supplies, but is there anything else
mhm.
you would suggest?
Just obviously maximize your carry-on backpack and the size of the duffel bag you can bring on. For me, if I know I'm going somewhere, I'm gonna be on a flight the night before, I'll put the try to find like a little cooler stand-up one that will fit in my bag that's kind of squashable that can fit around in there. I'll put that in the freezer with a few ice packs, and right until I leave the door, I won't take it out just so that it can stay the coldest in there as long as I can. As well as the ice packs will last longer as soon as the little lunchbox cools down, and just maximize what you can fit inside duffel bags and whatnot. For me, I use needle tips and I use a CGM, I use a Dexcom. I'll kind of just find ways to fit that into other things like shoes or just put it into little Ziploc bags and fit it into the compartments of the suitcase or bag just to kind of free up space for any other things that I may need, personal or diabetic wise.
Well, you've kind of answered my next question, which was what are you using? And pump is CGM, and it sounds like you're not on the pump, but you're doing the CGM. So when did you
Yeah.
start the CGM, and did that? I wish the CGM had been around when I was playing, but so tell
No.
me how that's impacted your life going from going on the CGM, and then have you ever looked at doing the pump?
Um, Going on the CGM, I started that my senior year of college. I started using it. I started on the Dexcom. My doctor was trying to get me on it for a while. I was kind of reluctant to do it just because of the amount of hits, bumps, and bruises I was getting throughout school. I didn't want it to ever get ripped off, and that's kind of why I've still shied away from the pump, just because I've had two CGMs ripped off throughout practice or playing, and I expected it, and I just wouldn't want that ever to happen with the pump, because I don't dealing with the math to back it up, because it's always continuously pumping into you is something that I've thought about maybe when I'm done playing basketball, when it's all said and done. I definitely will look into it, but doing my needle pens and everything works perfectly fine for me.
Right.
Found a way to make it work. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. What's the biggest challenge of playing basketball with type 1?
the biggest challenge is kind of the stigma of when I first started kind of playing, getting recruited. Coaches weren't too sure about it. I didn't share too much about it. I was very hesitant to tell them about it. I felt kind of though as I was lying a few times when just talking to them, just because I didn't want them to just look at me and be like, all right, he's a possible like casualty or something, or liability. But I mean, I could hang with everyone. I can play just as good and as hard as the next guy in line behind me, you know. And I ended up proving that. And Coach Cohen took the chance with me, and I never really had a problem throughout school. I kind of throughout the summers, I would kind of play around with my numbers and how what I could eat and what works best for me post, pre, and day before games. Kind of get my numbers right, figure out what works for me. How much insulin do I need to take? Do I need to take a unit or two at halftime because my adrenaline's kicking in or whatnot? So I really just took a lot of time throughout the summers and beginning of the year to figure out what worked best for me, just so that I would never have a problem during the year playing or practicing or whatever it may be.
What was your game day routine? When did you like to, and I get asked this all the time, when did you like to eat? What did you like to eat? What kind of food or balance? And what would you like your blood sugar to be going into a game? And one thing you hit on, it took me a while to figure out, was the whole adrenaline thing. I was driving me nuts for what, why my blood sugar going up when I'm playing?
Yep.
And practice would be so different than games because of that adrenaline.
Yeah.
But just
Yeah.
what'd you find worked? I always put the caveat, everybody's got to talk to their own doctors, figure out their own program, take the time like you did during the summers and figure out what works for you. But just out of curiosity, I'm curious what you found to be the best for you.
For me, my game day looks about wake up call whenever coaches would put that in for us. Get up, get breakfast. I'd usually keep my breakfast to yogurts, fruits, and eggs. Just keep it typically protein, just so I didn't take as many carbs in really. Lunch, I would throw a little bit of carb in and just I'd keep it high protein throughout the day typically.
Yeah.
Keep it as low carb as I could, because I'd usually load up on carbs the day before typically. And then game day, game would come, have my Gatorades or Powerades, whatever, with me on the bench if I ever needed it. And then halftime, I still finding out how to keep that adrenaline from coming up, because no matter what you do, it's never the same as practice to game. It's like something else just kicks in mentally and you just spike up. But going into the game, I'd like to be around 180 to 200, because the past year I noticed that I dip really low, and I dip down to like 120, and sometimes I would stay there, which would be good, or other times I would just keep going down, and then I'd chug a Powerade, go play, and then my adrenaline kicks in. I'm 300 coming into halftime, and I'm like, all right, like I just need water. I just need to chill for a second, coach, before we go out there and warm up again, you know. But yeah, that's what the game day looked like for me, and game time for me.
Yeah, and that was similar I was in the same boat where I 180, 200, kind of the sweet spot. I was much higher than that. I would keep going higher, and the bad thing that happened with that. If I was much lower, I'd be really worried about going low.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I found the same thing. What do you like for on the bench? And one thing we tell our campers is make sure you always have things on the sideline or things that you can get to put blood sugar up. What do you like to have?
For me, my drink of choice is either Powerade, some kind of Gatorade, just so the coaches feel better and don't have like 2 apple juices lined up on the counter right next to the bench, and they're looking at me like, why'd you bring 3 apple juices out with you? I'm like, it's because it's for when I get low. It's not for anything else. I did that a few times at Northeastern. Coach Cohen just looked at me like, he's like, you're lucky I know you're diabetic, because that's anyone else. Trainers and us are going to have a serious talk about you bringing juice up to practice.
Yeah,
so Powerades I felt worked best for me. Sometimes clementines, the oranges, I'd keep up there too, just a little boost right there. But Gatorade Powerade is my go-to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What advice would you give to a young athlete who's type 1, maybe entering high school, or who wants to play in college, let alone professionally, but play in college?
Don't be afraid to experiment with yourself. You know yourself the best. Obviously, doctors, they have the knowledge. They know what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, it's how you feel and what works best for you. Be very open. I've been on a few Zoom calls this summer with diabetics from across the country, and the one thing we all had in common was we've just been very shy and reluctant to kind of tell people that we're diabetics, hide when we do our injections or do finger sticks or anything, just because we're afraid of the judgment or something come from someone. Just don't be afraid of that. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something going on. It's good to have that open dialogue with people and let them know what's going on, because the more people that know, the better that they can help you, and they'll learn something about you too. So it's just got to be very open and just test things out for you, and just be open and honest with yourself about it, and just work hard as you can.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And, one thing we tell our campers is to be open about it, tell your friends. And I get asked, how did your teammates deal with it? Well, that's a question for you. How did your teammates deal with it? Did any issues from teammates with having diabetes, or?
No, my high school team, I think they were very shocked about it, but they always asked questions. They would always check on me. Other than that, they'd always ask me if I looked a little off, and I was off in the beginning, that sophomore or junior year. I didn't know what I was doing really, so them just kind of checking in, making sure everything was okay. Just extra time to just kind of sit back and the coach understood that my sophomore year, really just because he's never had someone deal with that before, so he understood. But prep school, no one really had a problem with it. They understood it. They'd ask me questions if they ever needed to. I'd tell them pretty much everything they need, where the glucose pen would be if I ever need something in the room. And then in college, it was the same. I just kind of just gave them the rundown, show them the glucagon, show them how it works, show them videos if I ever like didn't wake up or something just because I got too low or what it may be. And I always roomed with my best friend and everything, or everyone on the team, but I was super close with, and they always took the time to kind of just sit down and ask their own individual questions that they may have about it. They had family members, so some people had a background in it, and it really went really smoothly, honestly. Never had a problem with any of my teammates saying anything about it.
Yeah, that's great. And that's the same thing I found was people would have somewhere in their family have a connect. It might be type 2, but they'd at least know what diabetes was. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing that you said that struck a note with me is I was very shy when I was younger and didn't want to share it. And then you find out you're so much better off sharing it, and it's not as big a deal to others as you think it might be. Plus, they want to know about it. Did you have friends with diabetes, or know anybody had diabetes, or how was that?
I didn't really have any friends with diabetes. In high school, my cousin was a senior when I got diagnosed, so I only had her for the remaining of my freshman year. There wasn't that many other diabetics. There was probably 3 others in the school at the time. And then by the time I was a senior, there was about like 10 or 12, and they were all kind of freshmen and sophomores, so I really didn't know them that well. I didn't have any at prep school. In college, I started to meet a few here and there, just through playing and doing interviews like this with people, and kind of people just reaching out saying like that their son, daughter, or someone they knew had it, and like they play sports or somewhere I'm from. So I always try to go back for the type 1 diabetic walks that they do. The JDRF would do at Quincy or in Boston. Always just try to be involved in that.
Okay. After you got diagnosed, did you ever have any doubt that you could play in college, play professionally while having diabetes?
When I got diagnosed, I always wondered if I'd be able to play again. At first, I was very timid too. My parents were to let me go off on my own again. And of course, like, parents just always worrying, you can't stop them from doing that ever. But yeah, I mean, just kind of playing and going through in your sophomore, junior year, I just started progressively getting better and learning more about the game faster. It kept growing. I was about 6'6" when I was a junior, hit 6'9" when I was a senior. And then by the time I got into my senior year, I'd been playing local AAU tournaments with my uncle and whatnot, and my friends from high school and around Boston, and he just kind of put it in my head, like, if you really want to, you could actually do this. And when he said that for the first time, I thought he was crazy. I was like, there's no way I could play at like the highest level. There's no way I could do all this with what I got going on. Like, no one's going to want to take the chance. And then my senior year came around, I was just like, all right, what do I got to lose? It's now or never. And it just kind of took off from there. And I was like, I can do it. If I can make it into college, what's stopping me from making it one more,
Right. No, that's awesome. What's your highlight playing basketball? What memories, when you think back of a couple of the best moments, what comes to mind?
Best moments is, I'd probably say, when I was on ESPN Top 10 and making it to the NCAA tournament my senior year, playing Kansas. You can't beat that. That was the best thing ever, winning that tournament and getting into it, seeing our names on Selection Sunday. Best feeling ever.
That's awesome. What was the top 10 moment?
It was in a tournament we had in South Carolina. Point guard Vasa Pushita, he threw a lob up to me, and I had no idea that the foreman was still under the hoop, and I just ended up going getting it. I'm like almost like jumping over him, and he's just right underneath me. I was like, oh, like, yeah, this is top 10 right here. And I just put it down, and like I ended up like on his shoulders for a little bit, and he had to run away from it. I was like, oh, this is top 10. Like, this has to be. If this isn't, there's something wrong.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Has diabetes ever affected your games?
Yes, when I was first diagnosed that junior year, we that summer I had we were just playing all around Massachusetts, just in these tournaments to get ready for the season. We went out to eat actually to this little restaurant, and I undercalculated, and my blood sugar ended up going really high, and I just couldn't play for the rest of the day. And we ended up losing that tournament we were playing in. And I was like, I will never not be prepared for what I'm eating and know what I can and what's low carb and what's the best option for me. And that, and then there's been a few practices here and there. I don't think there's ever been a game where I've ever got too low, because that damn adrenaline always kicks in, so I never get too low,
Right.
So.
Right. That's not bad if that's it. So that's you're doing things right, and obviously putting the time in to prepare and know your body and all that. So that's great. If there's anything else you'd like to share with kids, young hoopers who have type 1,
just have fun. You're not different from anyone else. You're the same. You just have something going on that they don't, and they may have something else going on like within their world that they don't want you to know about.
Yep.
So it's just be open and honest, have fun, and just be yourself, because you never know, you talking about it could make someone else's day a little bit better, more likely to open up to you and just have a better impact on you, that you were able to share it with them, and maybe they'll share their story with someone else the next day, or even you that day,
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And frankly, I've enjoyed hearing your story right now, because it brings back memory and things I've gone through where I thought I was, you think you're the only one or whatever. And so I think it's awesome what you've been able to achieve both collegiately and professionally. So you're to be commended.
Thank you. I remember when I was first diagnosed and kind of going up through high school, prep school, college, obviously when I first started playing again in high school, they referenced you. And I was just like, really? If he made it, then like, why not? Like why can't I do it? He did it back then with less than what I had right now, and he made it work,
Yeah.
So just looking up to you has just always kind of been the goal, to play at that highest level. And honestly, it's amazing like what you were able to do back then with what you had. Imagine to now, if you had this technology back then, how much easier it would have been on you. Just like night and day, honestly. Can't imagine.
I wish. You're right. And then I think back, for me, I'm dating myself, but Bobby Clark was a Hall of Fame hockey player who had type 1 diabetes, played for the Flyers, and that was if he can play, then I can do, So I think that's really, and that was, I knew the impact it had on me. That's why I wanted to share. And I think it's great you're sharing your story, so others can see that you're able to do it. So that's great. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your time, and good luck going forward.
Thank you.